Welcome to the Goose One channel. The concept album is an interesting concept. An album that not only has a thematic through line within it, but also a narrative one, and is generally created in a holistic view, with every song being created in conjunction with each other. Funky, in his video on concept albums, has this really good primer on the concept itself.
Albums are often just a collection of songs with a few threads sewn in. Maybe they're made around the same time frame or with a central idea in mind, but depending on how far you bend this meter, you can end up in something called high concept territory. Arcing narratives, extensive callbacks, hell, even just a common point of inspiration would fall under this umbrella.
My personal idea of the concept album really tends to be centered around the narrative focus I mentioned earlier. Your The Walls and American Idiots. Albums that aim to tell something of a story throughout their runtime. And for as many classics that have been created as concepts, almost as many, if not more, flops have arisen from it. As a quick aside, I know I call these albums bad in the title of the video, but when I say that, I more so mean that they fail to really pull off the intended concept. Most of the albums that I discuss here are ones I do have some affinity for, and the whole point of this video is that despite their shortcomings, I can't stop thinking about them, which means they must be doing something right, at the very least. Todd in the Shadows already has a great video on Styx's Kill Royals here, but I really do think it was one of the first concept albums to be truly bad. A story that almost feels like it's aping The Wall directly, yet pulled off through the lens of incredibly cheesy 80s rock and a slight bit of tech-based Asian racism. It's an incredible experience, and if you just want a small taste of it, I suggest listening to, at the very least, Mr. Roboto. Like I said though, Todd's video on the subject is already pretty thorough, and I'd rather talk about some more interesting, lesser known records. And to start off, let's handle one I've had many a conversation about. Set to Stun and the Desperado Undead. While we're on the topic of the Wall ripoffs, Set to Stun reaches for a grandeur it does not in a million years deserve, through a sheen of a metalcore sound that died about 5 years before the record itself dropped. Throughout the Desperado Undead, we follow, as far as I can tell, a chosen rebel. A man born to bring a new era to a war-torn world of crime, oppressive policing, and a supposed body snatcher epidemic.
These self-entitled protectors promise to usher in a new era of peace and equality, free from the tyranny and oppression of the government and a crime lord syndicate that police our streets at night. Are these men the answers to our prayers? Have they been sent to deliver us from the body snatcher epidemic? Or will their sacrifice be in vain? How many more will die tonight?
And the record needs you to buy into this world, into this concept. Because if you don't, you're not getting anything else out of this lyrical content. Well, except for the over-the-top misogyny, homophobia, and gore. It's very hard to stomach once you begin to understand what they're singing about, and while I understand what it's trying to do, it never really lands in my opinion. Still further, a lot of the lyrics themselves are just very cringy too. Just like the band expects us to, the writing on the record is super bought into the concept. Every word, every line is literal. There's not really a metaphor or simile to be found. So when moments like Mr. Death and the Mickey Mouse pastiche happen, it's very hard to take it seriously and can cause some incredible tonal shifts.
This is Borrowing the Dismemberment 101 with Set to Stun. Hey, what are you doing?
Now that we've successfully cracked through the sternum, we're gonna pull out his arm, rip out his gizzards, and scissor his livers, tear out his lungs. Now are we having fun? One thing I love.
This absolute unwillingness to let the concept waver for even a moment and the intense tonal dissonance it results in does lead to a really interesting place in my opinion, at times at least. This record is frantic, almost in a mathcore sense. It never really reaches Dillinger Escape Plan or Tony Danza levels of chaos, of course, but the constant tempo and segment switches do keep you on edge in a similar way. And then in another way, Desperado Undead also really does manage to pull us, or at least me, into the melodrama of the piece. There is something beautiful in the way it uses leitmotifs like Alice in Trips and Staria 2.
Baby, don't you cry. Everyone's eyes, we can survive. I'll show you that death as a beautiful sight. There's more to your life than waiting for the end. At least it won't hurt now. And you've all made me so proud tonight. Don't cry for me, no, don't speak. Don't wake me from my sleep. Just let me dream I've gone home. What's your time that we shine.
And there is something really compelling about its many dramatic speeches like on Blackest Night. Yet every kind of cool or interesting moment is outshined by something tonally weird or a storytelling segment that feels out of place and frankly cringe. It's an unbalanced experience, but I do think the boys in Set to Stun captured some type of lightning in this bottle. In stark opposition to Set to Stun, I don't think Starset's Transmissions from 2014 leans enough into its concept. While STS try to tell a story with every single line they deliver, despite how silly it all comes across at points, it feels as though Starset failed to really portray their story effectively throughout their 13-track runtime. And that's me being as charitable as I can really afford to be. I've had a long history with this record. It's one of the first albums I can really remember loving, and I've revisited it a lot over the years, and with each re-listen, I realize more and more just how shallow it really is. As a quick intro, here's the basic plot summary of Transmissions. Messages, and I think it's First Contact, maybe? Yeah? It's hard, very hard, if not strictly impossible, to really read a story into the record itself. The songs seem to portray a framework of a story and tell of some kind of impending danger, unknown messages and frequencies, and in Macro there seems to be an element of a first encounter of extraterrestrial life. But this theme isn't holistically continued through every track, and in fact is kind of a background element at most. So what does happen in the songs? What is being sung about on these tracks? Well, a lot of the topics just revolve around very normal hard rock song topics. Halo and Dark Army are love songs, so is Let It Die, and the album's biggest song, My Demons, well, it's just Animal I Have Become by 3 Days Grace, or Monster by Skillet. It's nothing special lyrically. So what's my main issue with the record itself? My main issue is not only that Starset failed to tell their story in a compelling way, but really most of these songs could be tracks from Dustin Bates' previous band Downplay, minus the immense breadth of space references, which don't really go further than using astrophysics-related terms or metaphors. If there's any story to really be told, it's hidden in supplementary material not immediately obvious from the primary text, which is bad for a concept album. If there's a novel or comic I have to read to understand your record, even in the slightest, you didn't write a concept album. You wrote a soundtrack, loosely. In the end though, I do have a lot of affinity for these records still. These are kind of formative albums for me, which is exactly why I have so much to say about them. I've spent so much time with them, and while I heavily enjoyed them when I was a younger man, I can now see exactly why I don't enjoy them as much anymore. I'm also not saying you shouldn't enjoy these records, and if you do, obviously more power to you. But I just think it's important to analyze the art you experience, the art you love. So even if you do enjoy these records, consider thinking about whether you agree with any of my criticisms. And with that settled, it's time for me to leave. This has been fun and all, but I can only make videos so long before I get too lost in the sauce. So if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, check out my Patreon in the description box, all that bullshit, and I'll see you all in the next... Oh, I fucking hit my mic. Next video.